Welcome, Michael Yardney here, and for our regular Rich Habits, Poor Habits videos, I've got on the other side of the world, Tom Corley. Hello, Tom, and welcome to 2018.
Hey, Michael, how you doing? It's going to
Tom,
be a great year.
it is going to be a great year, and I'm really looking forward to continuing doing these regular sessions with you where we share what we've learned in our times of working with and mentoring successful people, because success doesn't crop up overnight. We have learned over time that you've got to start somewhere and you've got to work your way up. And one of the ways to do this is learn the rich habits successful people have made part of their life and get rid of our poor or disempowering habits. And we've all got a selection of both. So what I'd like to do in this session, and it's probably going to take so long we'll cover it over 2 sessions, is have a talk about the rich habits that have made self-made millionaires what they are, wealthy. Because, Tom, most of the wealthy people in your study and that I come across didn't start off wealthy. They weren't born into wealth or with a silver spoon in their mouth, were they?
No, and there's a lot of research that backs that up, Michael. Not only mine, where 76% of the wealthy came from poverty or the middle class, but the WealthX survey, that's a report that comes out every year. They're consistently between 80 and 82% of the millionaires are self-made. So, this idea that there's this, wealth gap and income inequality, well, yeah, it's 1 year that it exists because there are new millionaires that pop up every year.
Definitely. Every year there's a couple of different organizations that bring it out. Capgemini does, Credit Suisse does, and it definitely does show that the gap between the rich and the poor is widening. But in the area where our audience is watching, in the United States, in America, in Europe, in Western countries, there's really no good excuse not to become wealthy because the information is out there, but you've actually got to do something about it. You've got to recognize you are where you are because of all the things you've chosen to do and the things you've chosen not to do, but you can actually choose to do things differently. You can actually choose some new habits. So let's learn from people who've already done it, Tom. What are some of the rich habits, the things that self-made millionaires and successful people do to keep them that way?
Well, the one that I think is in at least the top 5 of being the most important is daily reading to learn. One of the things that I found is the rich read to educate themselves, not to entertain themselves. They're looking to gain knowledge, so they read and then they document new information. I use a fact binder. Some of the self-made millionaires in my study used other devices to write down information that they wanted to refer to on a regular basis. So they read to learn, and then they used that information in their business, in their career, and they by using it, they were able to help make themselves more successful in life.
I just recently watched the movie about Warren Buffett. I think it was called The Making of Buffett, and it showed how much time he has always spent on self-education and on reading. But Tom, as you correctly said, reading for education, not for entertainment. What sort of books do these wealthy people read?
Well, what I found in my research was they are reading, a lot of the self-made millionaires are reading books of other successful people. To millionaires, reading about biographies of other people, reading history, well, that's a way of figuring out, what not to do, Michael. So they're learning what not to do, what other mistakes people have made. They become signposts, they become red flags, and they make a note of them, and they say, oh, I have to make sure I don't do that, make that mistake, because, Warren Buffett made that mistake, and I don't want to repeat it. So reading these biographies and history helps them to do is avoid making mistakes that other millionaires made along the way. Okay.
So one of the habits of the self-made millionaires is that they read. What's another one, Tom?
Well, daily exercise, specifically aerobic exercise. And this was really an interesting one to me because after further research, I found out that the self-made millionaires, by exercising aerobically, were actually increasing the size and the health of their brain. By taking in more oxygen, that oxygen made its way to the brain. It helped, it was absorbed into the brain cells, helped scrub the brain cells clear of these free radicals. And then it helps carry like a sponge, carry all the waste material out and back through the lungs and out through carbon dioxide. So by exercising aerobically, you're actually improving your IQ.
It's interesting, a theme that's coming through what you're mentioning is that there's a lot of scientific evidence, there's a lot of factual evidence to these habits as well. I don't think people recognize it when they do it. They don't look for the science behind it, but there is a reason why successful people are successful, isn't there?
Yeah, and you know, that's where mentors come in, because they're important. They help us to they help steer us in the right direction. You may not know why you are reading every day to learn. You may not know why it's important to exercise every day, but the mentors, you know, they guide you along, and then maybe at some point you figure out, hey, this is exactly, you know, what that's done for me. And now I understand it. But that's why mentors are so important. Sometimes you don't need to know the why behind it. You just need to follow walk in the footsteps of the wealthy.
No argument about that at all. I still have mentors. I still have coaches. All successful sporting people do as well. And some of them are mentors that I've met. Some of them are people that I've never met, like Jim Rohn. I've just recently bought again another course of his because some of his information is timeless. But I think you've got to accept you've got to pay for mentors. There's so much that you can get for free on the internet, but it's not the same level as somebody who, in fact, I just saw my business coach walk in a moment ago that I'm going to be spending some time with him this afternoon. Successful people, another habit I've found, Tom, is that they actually hang out with other successful people.
Well, speaking of Jim Rome, you know, he's famous for that line that you're the sum total of the 5 people you hang out with. I love that line because that embodies this particular rich habit. I found that the self-made millionaires in my study, they made a habit of trying to build relationships with other success-minded people. I say success-minded people, not successful people, because the most important thing is to be success-minded, to be eager to be successful. Those are the people you want to hang out with. Why? Because they're typically upbeat, optimistic, enthusiastic people, and you feed off of that. It spreads like a virus, those positive emotions, that positive mindset. In fact, there's research, there's neurological data out there that is clear that when you have a negative mindset, that you're effectively using more of your emotional center of your brain, which resides in the limbic system and part of the brainstem, and you're using less of the neocortex, the prefrontal cortex. When you're positive, have a positive mental outlook, you're using 100% of your brain.
Now, people would maybe ask, how do you get to meet other successful, like-minded people? I know in your study you found that they network, they volunteer, they join mastermind groups or business groups, and so there's lots of ways of doing it. But I also think it's equally important, Tom, to avoid hanging out with negative people, people who will influence you in a bad way.
Yeah, so Nicholas Christakis is a famous researcher on habits, and he came out with a study a couple of years ago, and in that study he said your habits and the mindset spread like a virus through your social network. So if you imagine that, you know, you're hanging out, you've got 2 or 3 friends that you're hanging out with, and they're negative, pessimistic, you know, they just have the wrong attitude about life, that's going to infect you. And it's going to cause you, maybe you won't become entirely negative, but it's going to dampen your positivity for sure.
It has to, Tom, doesn't it? So successful people hang around other successful and, as you say, success-minded people. Tom, they've also got goals. They know where they're heading. But, Tom, they pursue them. They chase them.
Yeah, so here, the important thing I want to distinguish here is they're not pursuing just any goals. They're pursuing their goals. They're pursuing the goals behind their dreams, not their parents' dreams, not their parents' goals, not some teacher's dream or goals for them. They're pursuing the dreams and the goals that are important to them. They're taking their ladder and putting it on their wall. And this is important because most people, I fall into this category, I'll confess. When I was starting my second year in college, I asked my father what I should major in, and he said, major in accounting. Accountants will, you become an accountant, you'll never starve. He's right. You don't starve, but you also don't get rich. So I pursued my father's dream. And it wasn't until I stumbled into the rich habits that I realized, this was the dream I should be pursuing. I should be a writer, and I should be teaching these rich habits. And ever since then, my income has doubled. I'm upbeat, positive. I'm enthusiastic. I get up at 4:45 every morning without, I haven't used a clock since 2011 to wake up. This has completely changed my life. And now I understand why the self-made millionaires pursue their own dreams and their own goals.
Interesting. So passion makes work fun. It gives you energy. It gives you persistence. It keeps you focused, and it helps you get over the failures, because to be successful, you're going to have to fail more than everyone else as well. You're going to make more mistakes than people. You're going to get rejected often. And that's why it's important to have a goal and know where you're heading. But Tom, you also mentioned something else a minute ago, which is another one of the habits of successful people. And that is that they get up early.
Yeah, this is important, Michael, because when you get up early, you can devote a couple of hours to basically investing in yourself, in your future. Now, it might not seem like a big deal to wake up, say, 2 hours early and spend those 2 hours doing things like reading to learn, or pursuing some dream or the goals behind your dream, some side hustle that you're interested in. But those 2 hours every day add up over time. And eventually they start paying dividends. And the self-made millionaires in my study, they learned that. And they were all, for the most part, they were all early risers. The reason I get up at 4:45 every morning is because about 50% or 60%, 50% of the self-made millionaires in my study did that. So I said, hey, I'm not going to argue with success.
That makes a lot of sense. Well, we've covered 5 really great habits in this video. So I would like to come back and have a chat with you next week about some more. But so far we've talked about the fact that successful people read consistently, but read to educate themselves. They exercise. It doesn't just help their body, it helps their mind. They hang out with other successful people, and they've learned to avoid negative people. They pursue a goal. They put a ladder up against their own wall. It'd be a real pity to find that you've been climbing a ladder and it's not going to get you to where you want to go to. And they get up early. Tom, that's a really good bunch of habits to start with. And I know that in your daily blog and in mine, we discuss them as well. And in our great book, Rich Habits, Poor Habits, we go through this in lots more detail. So if the people watching this have enjoyed it, please pass the message forward, as we're trying to do to help educate people. Click on the social media buttons on this website, wherever you're watching this, on Facebook, on YouTube, on our blogs, and pass it on to a friend. Maybe you can help them too, because that's another interesting habit, Tom, isn't it? That wealthy people do want to drag other people up with them.
Yeah, they are very happy to pull people up and mentor them. That's just one of the rich habits that I uncovered. Thank God for that, because they help they mentor a lot of people. And you've seen it in your lifetime, Michael. I've seen it in mine. Some really successful people who have individuals they're mentoring. Those individuals invariably become successful.
Fantastic. So thank you very much for your time, and I look forward to seeing you next week.
Same here, Michael.